Hi, I'm Dr. Mark, and I'm going to help you sing and perform more like the top artists around the world. I'm a professional voice teacher, performance coach, and opera stage director. I've helped thousands of singers around the world learn the techniques and methods that got the top singers to where they are. So it's Christmas time, so why not talk about famous singers singing "O Holy Night" in a higher key? So we're going to be watching a compilation video of some of the top singers singing "O Holy Night," and I have no idea who we're going to watch. I haven't watched this compilation video yet, and so it's a little terrifying to think that there might be someone on here who I'm not sure I would call amazing, but my guess is since they're here, there's at least something we can find that's amazing that we can learn from them, if not a ton of stuff. So let's see what we got. Okay, Luciano Pavarotti. He's probably my favorite singer of all time. If you can watch closely, the lower jaw drops, upper teeth come out. He opens this oral pharynx space in this nice kind of place that opens up, gets this really nice, consistent ring up top. The other thing that you'll notice is he's connecting with his bottom to his top, not necessarily pushing up, but he's keeping that sense of slide in the vocal mechanism, so there isn't a total disengagement between de and vine, right? He's keeping that connection between those notes so we don't have this break, which shows consistent airflow and that he's not pushing and over compressing on that top. Gorgeous singing. Is there a lot going on dramatically here to watch on a visual standpoint? Not a lot. He's just standing there. And that's okay. Sometimes it's all right just to hear glorious singing and let that be what people are listening to and focusing on. That visual element is increasingly more important to our audiences. So it's a little tricky for modern audiences to really enjoy just watching someone who's not really engaging a lot dramatically in a moment, but gorgeous singing. Upper tooth smile, releases that jaw. And you can see that across the board here. There's a little bit of that jaw pulling forward a lot, which is, again, one way to hit high notes. It does open that airway in a particular way, and it creates some tension there. Not my favorite way. I don't think it's the best way to get that sound and to get the high notes. But that said, cool stuff. Nice sound here. They're engaging their face here in a way that's emotional, and we'll buy it, we'll believe it. It's interesting. Just like all these people, when we're getting into this upper high register, if you were to turn off the volume, you would think they're singing She's singing divine, but it's really got this place in the back. The upper teeth come out, that airflow staying consistent. She's getting it really buzzy and forward, that kind of whiny place that we're looking for up there. Nice and rich in the back though. Wow, that's a very operatic sound and really gorgeous up there. Wow. One thing to notice all of these is this kind of stretch below this low note and this high note. Another way to think about it is what's going on with this breath. There isn't a moment, grab vine. That's not what's happening. Divine. It's this expansion, this feeling of openness, continuing that breath flow and not pushing or grabbing at that high note, right? That's what's going on here. One thing you can do today to try it out, put your hands on your stomach, and as you're sliding up to that high note, pay attention. Notice, is there any time when those stomach muscles are wanting to grab or get tight or to stop? They should feel like they're flexible and staying suspended. And that's what we're hearing all the way through there. I think if you were able to go up and put your hands on their tummy there and see what was going on, you would feel engagement, but it'd be a suspended, open engagement and not an all of a sudden crunch right before the high note. You'll notice that if you're feeling stress before that high note, that stress is often coming before the high note. You'll actually notice your body's tensing up before you actually even sing that note. So it's not the note itself that's causing the problem. It's the subconscious impulse to want to grab, to get tight, to push, to force. I got to work harder. It's a higher note. And instead, what we want to think about is just release, open, suspense, and try to counterbalance that desire to want to clench or get tight. And there's a lot of ways to do that. But in general, if it's getting tight, think even earlier. Think on the note before that you're already opening and suspending and getting that feeling of openness and counteracting that desire that's going to happen in a moment to want to contract by thinking even more open, so that as you're going in that direction, you will have been prepared for it and the vocal mechanism is ready to hit that high note. That one you can actually hear the slide up into it, right? Well, you might think, I don't want to slide though. I don't want to hear that slide in the sound. The key is that it's still got to feel like a slide here in the throat. It's got to feel be this feeling of stretch and not disconnect vine. That's the key there. So the way to practice it is just like that, is to actually slide up to that high note until it feels like you're just sliding so fast that we can't hear it. That's the key to keeping that connection between those intervals. The biggest source of tension is that disconnect, because it allows our body to kind of reset and pressurize and cause problems. So trying to keep that consistent airflow as we're going up to the high note. It's the in-between moment that is really the key there in keeping that consistent airflow and that breath. Also, if you want to do it with the straw and put your hand in front of that straw to feel that airflow coming through, make sure it's staying consistent between the low note and high note, and that there isn't a stop, break, or retraction, or even a push behind it. That's also a really helpful way to gauge and see what's going on and to see why that high note's giving you problems. Because high notes are notorious for giving people problems. It's not necessarily that they need to be harder. They don't need to be hard. They don't need to be difficult. But for most of us, it takes a lot of effort to make sure that we don't fall into that impulse of wanting to put more effort into it, right? Okay, it's good. It's nice. Again, same stuff. We're seeing the upper tooth smile, seeing that jaw releasing, that oral pharynx open. Again, with Carrie, that jaw's a little forward. And we're hearing a little bit of that tension with that slower vibrato for a moment there. It's a little heavy. It doesn't mean it's bad. She still gets the note. It's gorgeous, beautiful. But I wonder if it could have been a little easier for her there. And it always can. There's always something we can do that would make things easier. One of the reasons that bringing this jaw forward is problematic is that also creates tension with the tongue. Either to stay forward, in which case it's going to create tension for having to put it into a more forward place than it naturally would go, or it's going to pull back or be further back in placement as you're pulling that jaw forward into that oropharynx and cause tension and stress and pressure that way. So that jaw forward thing causes problems, even though I've heard it touted and people say that it's necessary at different points. That's not been my experience. Again, maybe I'm wrong, maybe they're right. It doesn't matter to me. Do it both and see which one is going to feel easier and help you to sing easier and get the sound that you're wanting to go for, and go with that. You'll notice here with her hand, right? That's more a vocal gesture of her getting her body to work. It's a singer's gesture. It's not necessarily a dramatic one, though it does kind of serve this like she's gearing up for this high note moment. But what's interesting is there wasn't tension. She was keeping it moving. Again, a really valuable skill and tool that we could use as we're singing. If we find that we're wanting to get tight and tense before we get to that high note, keep your body moving and flexible, and that'll keep it from being able to lock down and get tight and stiff. Upper tooth smile, jaw released, tongue forward. You'll notice also as you're watching the videos where you can see the tongue, that it's flat along the sides. It's flat and forward. It doesn't all of a sudden get tight and pull kind of narrow in that tongue or pull back. It's really, they work hard to keep it flat and forward. You'll see that throughout this. It's an ah, and that's also part of that ah sound that we're looking for, is that tongue forward and flat and passive. It's not just the ah, we want that on all vowels and everything that we're doing, even if we're changing the shape back here. It's that passive tongue that we've talked about in past videos. If you want to try it today, again, you can just look into a mirror and really try to make sure that that tongue's staying flat, and it's almost like the sides of your tongue are wanting to touch the edges of your teeth there, so it's spreading out in every direction. You can watch, and just by watching it in a mirror, it will help. Or you can practice with a puppy dog tongue hanging out of your mouth, and sing that way. Divine, right? And see where that goes. That can also help see if that tongue gets tight or tense in any place. And if you see it, then keep working on it until you can do that same thing without that tongue getting involved. So you'll notice in all these, same pattern, right as they go forward, they're going to go up. They drop the jaw, upper teeth coming out, tongue stays forward, and they just through that Noel all the way through it. And it's gorgeous. It's great. They also aren't punching it. Here we actually disconnected. We lost a little bit of that feeling of slide in between, which is why it sounded like she changed registers, right? We got kind of a slightly different sound on the top. That was noticeable. It didn't sound like one consistent voice. Is that good or bad? No, it's just a different sound, different way to get the high note. In general, we want to be able to choose which way we're going to go through it. And for most people, keeping that sense of slide and connection going up to the high note is going to keep it easier and more comfortable. So we're seeing these consistent things all the way across the board. One of the things that I would suggest if you're trying this out is to make sure that as you're kind of revving into going into this higher place, that you do just kind of check your body and make sure that nothing's getting tight as you're approaching that high note. Even if you're in the middle of a performance, kind of just keep moving things and keep them a little bit flexible. Use them to gesture and communicate, be expressive. That's great, but keep things flexible. Show off, which is great. It's actually gorgeous sound. Since we can't see the live video, I won't talk a whole lot about it other than really nice. Okay, not sure I'm understanding the context of this song being sung in underwear and sparkly lays, but what? Okay. So dramatically, it's a little like confusing as to what's going on because it doesn't seem to fit the song, but whatever. There's probably more to that story that I don't know, and I'm not sure I do want to know, but there it is. That said, he kept it really forward, really lean, really focused. And so consequently, it didn't get that sound that we usually associate with falsetto where it pulls back and gets breathy. It stayed clean and forward. But the reality is it's in a really similar place to that falsetto. It's going to feel really similar, if not the same. The only things that really change are where we're placing that sound, that resonance, that kind of buzzy feeling is staying really far forward. And also the consistency of air pressure and chord closure there is staying more balanced rather than going to the aspirate side. Awesome. Nice. Cool. We got the sense of like engagement there. I think we could get her to get that note a lot easier. It's in there. It's gorgeous. It's great. But I think we could get it with a lot less tension and a lot less gearing up for it, and even unlock a lot of other high notes in there. If she's singing well on that note with the amount of tension that I'm seeing, then there's got to be a ton more in there that we're not hearing yet. Again, great sound, but I think we could do it a lot easier. I think we could do it easier by releasing that jaw and relaxing a little bit. It's a little overextended here in the front, which is actually causing more tension and tightness in the back and not helping her get that high note. There is a balance between how wide the front of that jaw should be for different vowels, and it also has to do with this back. Imagine here that you have this hinge, right, and it opens, but there's a point where if you overextend in the back where it actually starts to pinch things down in the back and cause problems. You also notice that her body was tensing up and trying to push that sound out a little bit as we got there too, which is causing her some stress and a little more tension than she needs. So we could do it easier, but still very nice. Gorgeous voice. Wow. And really expressive. Really fun to watch. You'll notice that she's telling the story with her eyes and her face. She's staying engaged with the emotion. Cool. You'll notice there she used a method of hooking. Divine. She sang the low note. Divine. Right? It wasn't divine. Was what she did do. Consequently, you'll notice that hooking from below to the top is just another way of keeping that kind of slide and helping the body from wanting to constrict and get tight and prepare and punch that high note. Again, it's a way to do the same thing. Do we have to do it that way? No. Does she have to do it the way? I don't think so, because she did some other stuff later where she didn't use that hooking method, but she did in that moment. Worked great. And stylistically, is it bothersome to the audience? Nope, it's not. It just sounds like its own unique thing. So really, really cool. Loved her singing. She's one where, as I'm watching, that I thought to myself, I need to go back and do some other reactions to her. She's a voice and a person that I'm not familiar with, but that I am interested in seeing more of. Wow. So you'll notice here, just like all the others, if you were to turn off the volume, it's just this kind of smiling thing that's going on. Almost the whole time. They close their mouth around it to make consonants. They let their kind of tongue and things change slightly to get us the different vowels or approximations of them. But really, they're singing the whole time and letting the tongue and teeth and jaw slightly change to give us everything else. So think and then sing the pure vowel. That sounds different than what I was just suggesting. But it's not. It's just different ways of saying the same thing. And what that is we got to be thinking all the time and keeping this back here and letting this then just stay as speech-like as possible. Same thing. Same stuff. What's making it awesome all the way through are these consistent principles that you hear me talking about all the time. You'll notice we've gone through a lot of different singers, a lot of different styles, from opera to pop to gospel to rock to everything else in between. And you'll notice no matter what, that breath flow staying consistent as we're going up there, that upper tooth smile comes out, this goes open in the back, the jaw releases, and they don't push or strain at that high note. They just they keep that feeling of slide and consistent pressure all the way through, keep it really lean, and keep that placement really forward. That's where it is. Check it out. We'll keep watching. You're going to keep noticing it and keep watching it. Even when we're not talking about this song in specific, it's all over the place. So what's the difference? Well, what makes a difference between singer and singer is the stylistic things that they do, how they shape the space. It's not always in the back or the same kind of Sometimes it's taller, sometimes it's wider and shallower, sometimes they're treating the vowels and consonants differently, meaning they're either staying on the first part of a diphthong or jumping to the second part. They're staying on the vowel longer, or they're giving more time to the consonant, or they're putting grit in their voice, or they're changing the placement slightly, or they're adding more warmth and darkness with that brightness. They're giving it more of that chiaroscuro. There's all kinds of ways to change the style thing, but these basic things are staying the same. One of the things that comes up a lot in lessons is people want to talk about registers and flips and breakpoints, passaggio, whatever you want to call them. And my response is usually to just at least temporarily throw that all out the door. Throw it out the window. Why? Well, first and foremost is because as soon as we do and we think there should be, our subconscious thinks, oh, that's what you want? Okay, I'll make it happen. And so it does. It finds ways to create these distinct registers and forces the voice to do all kinds of crazy stuff that doesn't need to be done to reinforce that idea. Instead, if we just think, I'm just going to sing with my same voice and try to keep it consistent, and if I'm singing healthily and efficiently and balanced, then it's just going to feel like all the same thing. And it really does. Often when we feel a big change and register shift moment happen, that's because one of the registers is out of balance. What I mean by out of balance is that means that our airflow and our chord closure have a certain balance that they need to stay in to work efficiently. That's why we use straws and things like that, is to find that efficient balance, meaning the speed and quantity of air coming out is in balance with how much that chord closure is coming together, so that airflow starts, the chord come together, and there isn't this extreme bulging or tightening or tensing. It's the most efficient balance of those two things together that we're looking for. So, for example, if we have to have this big switch from our bottom to top, it usually means that we're overpressurizing the bottom, which means that these vocal folds are coming together too hard for the velocity of air coming through, so that it bulges these vocal folds until they can't go anymore, and then they phonate that way, and they try to stretch as they get higher, but there's a certain point where they can't keep it anymore, and they have to break because a new set of muscles has to get engaged to actually let us get that higher note. So then it does break, we get that higher note, and then we change a bunch of other stuff with it at the same time, because there is this big shift and it changes placement. This feeling is kind of jarring and disorienting. It sounds different, and it's all because the balance is off. If we get that lower register more in balance, and as we transition up, it's just going to be smooth and consistent all the way up. Kind of cool. Now, that's really mind-bending, will make people angry sometimes when we talk about that, because it is so ingrained and you'll read it everywhere. And I used to teach it a lot because it's a big issue in voice, is these registers and passaggio and how to deal with them, how to ease it out. But then as I was able to kind of let that go and just go to this balanced approach and try to smooth things out and make sure that we weren't over pressurizing, or on the flip side, being overly aspirate and putting too much air through, too much volume for the amount of chord closure, but staying in that balance, then all of a sudden it just didn't become relevant anymore. Am I saying that they don't exist? Not necessarily. I'm sure you can find all kinds of proof of how things change as we go through the register, but there shouldn't be this big abrupt shift and change. It should be really smooth, and we can make that smooth by making sure things that are in balance. Up in that register, it sounds like whistle tone, which if we're talking about whistle tone, the way it's described is if we have these vocal folds, and usually the entire vocal fold comes together to vibrate and make the sound that comes up. In whistle tone, it's just a very small chink of that. The rest of it stays together and just very small chink vibrates. What we're hearing here that makes us think it's whistle tone is A, because it is really, really high, but B, because we kind of hear that breathiness in it. It's suggested that that's what Mariah Carey's highest notes are, and when people are singing up there, it's suggested that that is what's going on, is that whistle tone. Is it good or bad? No, it just is. It's cool. Awesome. Okay. Side note here, love TNT Boys. One of the reasons I love it is because they break down this false barrier that boys and men learn from an early age, that singing high, it sounds girly, and that there's something wrong with that. There's not. They're singing with their voice. They're a boy. Does them singing with that make them any less of a boy? Does a girl singing low make them any less of a girl? No, not at all. So what's really cool here is that they're showing that even singing these super high notes, they're still really cool boys doing their thing, and that's great. That's cool. That's something to be applauded, something to be accepted and loved as we're watching it. That's really important. Why is that really important? Well, because we get boys all the time who, when they're mature, and these men, that they're trying to sing these lower notes and sing them beefy and big and full because it's masculine. And it makes them feel cooler. I don't know. when in reality, they have not just low notes, but they have this amazing high range too that they can access, but they don't because it sounds girly or it's not okay, or that when they're up there, it should sound girly. So they make it sound breathier and who knows what. They're limiting themselves. And that's sad that there's so much more vocal expression available to them, but they're shutting it away and tucking it away because somehow it's not seen as okay or appropriate or right or whatever you want to call it. So that's what I love about these boys. I also love that they're singing really well. I also love TNT Boys and watching how relaxed and comfortable they are on stage and how expressive they are and how much they own their performances. So cool. Speaking of Mariah Carey, whistle tone, high note. Hear that kind of white noise that comes through a little bit? It sounds like a whistle. There it is. If you were to talk to them about how those high notes sound, they're going to say it sounds really narrow, laser-like focused, whiny, and that there's no way that that can be an acceptable, okay sound, at least when they first discovered it. And they tried singing that way. So the key point here is as you're exploring a video, so you can go back and watch and see what it really sounds like. And when you listen to yourself, listen to it as if it's someone else. B is as you're exploring, don't judge the sound. Just say, am I getting different notes and is it staying easy? If so, there's something about that I need to keep. Again, I need to go back and watch more of his videos and see what's going on there. You'll notice that that tongue stayed forward and relaxed. The jaw actually wasn't super wide. He released it. I was actually seeing a lot less tension there than I was expecting. Really cool. He didn't overpressurize and push that top to get it there either. He actually seemed to pull back a little bit, which was really cool. So gorgeous singing, Morissette at the end there, loved it. You'll notice upper two smile, consistent airflow, doesn't try to push it, just lets it find that slot so that it stays narrow, lean, consistent, and it's gorgeous. Same here at the end. Really kind of interesting here with his last singer in that we heard a lot of kind of sliding in between these tones and it kept it really fluid and moving and kind of interesting. Gave us some really unexpected harmonies in there. Kind of cool. I'd want to go back and watch her a little bit more and see what's going on with that voice. That's a new one that I'm not super familiar with either. Ultimately, lots of really cool stuff. Performance-wise and acting and movement-wise, not a whole lot to comment on since we're just watching this one clip and it's a song where people usually just show I'm feeling something intense and joyful and opening that mouth. Technique-wise, it's really cool just to see the things that stay the same among all the singers. That's what you want to look for. What are the techniques and tools that the top performers are using across the board that I can use in any style? And then what are the ones that are unique within that style? And that's what we've been exploring today, and that's what we explore in most of the videos that we watch. Hope you enjoyed this as much as I do. Hope you have a happy holiday season and a Merry Christmas. If you want a voice lesson, a performance coaching, or want me to work with you or your group to help you sing easier, perform at a consistently higher level, book a time with me at mrperformingartstudio.com. You can also find me on wizio.com. And if you're wanting to buy lessons for someone else for Christmas or the holidays, and you're trying to figure out if there's a way to do it so you can buy a chunk of lessons together, feel free to reach out to me at marc@mrperformingartstudio.com, and you can see the link to that down below. Reach out, we'll find something that works for you. See you next time.